Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Library of the Weird. Today, I have another horror short story collection for you. This is All the Fabulous Beasts by Priya Sharma. The book was published in 2018 by Undertow Press, and it won the Shirley Jackson Award and the British Fantasy Award. There's even a story in here which won the British Fantasy Award all by itself. This beautiful cover here was made by a person called C7 Shiner, which I hope I'm pronouncing right. C7 Shiner has an Instagram channel, and there you can look up all their other art. It's mostly in this kind of manga-esque style, but it really fits the story, and I very much do like the artwork. Priya Sharma is an UK writer who works full-time as a medical doctor, which is absolutely crazy because she has still time to write short stories in the meantime, in her free time, basically. She has released over 40 short stories, according to Wikipedia. This book is her only short story collection, though, and it's basically her debut. But you can find many of her other stories in other anthologies. This collection contains 16 of her stories. The length of the stories ranges somewhere between from 8 pages up to 30 pages, but the bulk of the stories are between 10 and 20 pages long. All the stories are set in the real world or something resembling the real world, but you have a lot of, let's call it magical realism. Like, you can have very, very real stories that feature one magical element, and this doesn't make the stories fantasy, it makes them magical realism. The stories in here usually feature some kind of family theme, or they use interpersonal relationships as main motivators or main drivers of the story. For example, you will find dark family secrets in here, you will find lonely people searching for love, or lost people. Many of the protagonists or main characters in the stories are foreigners in the land they're living in. So you also see that through the lenses of their eyes, and see how they are searching for their true selves, which is really kind of interesting. Then there's also sexuality and desire as one of the main drivers of the story. But if you have a problem with that, don't worry too much, because at least as I remember, it's never really explicit. So you're just told that they slept together, or you're visiting the scene in the aftermath of sexual intercourse. But that's not all. You're also another main theme of the stories is biology or the environment. Many of the characters in the story find out that somewhere in their family line, and maybe even in themselves, there is something not quite human. But I mean, don't get scared. It doesn't go much into the science. It just features, like, let's say, mythical beings or something like that as one of the main themes. The back of the blurb of the book actually reads, the debut short story collection from acclaimed UK writer Priya Sharma, All the Fabulous Beasts, collects 16 stunning and monstrous tales of love, rebirth, nature, and sexuality. A heady mix of myth and ontology, and horror and the modern macabre. And that's basically what I told you just now. Yeah, it describes the stories of the books quite well. It's basically exactly what you get. Some of the stories do not only share their themes, they kind of share other features. For example, often you have two timelines. like, for example, one in the past and one in the now, and you're reading them at the same time. So, for example, there's one paragraph talking about the now, and then there's the next paragraph talking about the past, which can be confusing sometimes, especially in the beginning of the stories, where you don't really know the characters yet, and you still have to find out what's going on. One last thing before I tell you about some of the stories. As far as I know, the stories are not interconnected. So you're not like, this is the prequel story to this, and this is the sequel to that story. But, and this can be quite confusing, Priya Sharma uses a lot of the same names. There's like a Tom or a Pip or Pippa, and that can be confusing as well, because I was, in the beginning, I was thinking, okay, is this the Tom from the other story? And it turns out, no, it's not. It's another person. And once you get used to it, it's quite okay. And actually, I quite like it, because it shows that you don't have to get super inventive with names. Every time I try to write something, I really, really struggle with names. And Priya Sharma just shows that you don't have to use tons of names to write great stories. And I mean, if you found a fitting name for a character, why shouldn't it fit another character, right? What you should take away from what I just told you is that many of the stories share themes. Some of them share other features, and many feature the same names. And with that, I'm going to tell you about 3 stories that are in this book. The first story I want to tell you about is actually the first story of the book. It's called The Crow Palace. It's 24 pages long, and it really sets the groundwork for what's going to happen in this anthology. It tells the story of Julie and Pippa, who are twin sisters, who meet again after Julie left the family because she had a huge fight with her father about the death of her mother. She gets one day she gets a call. Her father has died, and she has to come to the funeral. And this is where she meets Pippa again after years. Pippa is kind of mentally challenged, while Julie is a career woman who really got into work. Her big problem is that she can't laugh. She does not feel anything, and this is one of the main parts of the story. And then at the funeral, there's I'd say seemingly disturbing friend of her late mom, and that friend tells Julie something about her mother felt double-crossed by the crows, and really weird stuff, all concerning birds. And this leads Julie to kind of play a bit of detective work and try to find some things out about the death of her mother, about her family's past, and this obviously leads to a few pretty much shocking discoveries, and I did not expect the ending the story delivered, but it was great. It features the most things I've talked about. There's obviously a family theme. We have biology in the sense that there's a lot of talk of birds. The characters, especially the main character, Julie, have some deep personal issues. And there's actually a bit of sex involved as well. So I really liked the first story, and after reading the whole collection, I think I appreciate it even more. The second story I want to tell you about is The Anatomist's Mnemonic. I hope I'm pronouncing that word right. English is not my first language. Um, it's 12 pages long, and it's one of the more realistic stories in this collection. There are basically no magical elements, but the writing is really, really, really good, and it makes you feel like there's something magical in the story. As at least I felt that way. It tells the story of Sam, who is, I think, 32-year-old bachelor who has quite the fetish for hands. As a teenager, when he was 19, he went to a fortune teller who told him that he will find and love a woman just because of her hands. And years later, he's calling Beth, who is a medical illustrator, and he wants her to draw him a pair of hands. He tells her he needs the hands for an application he's writing, while actually he kind of wants to set up a dating profile or something like that. And then when he gets to Beth's home, she shows him what she drew. He really likes it, and the both of them really, really hit it off. But then he notices her hands, and he's like, no, I can't date her. She has really, really ugly hands. And then Beth tells him the model for the hands she drew him are actually the hands of her sisters. And this is where the story really becomes interesting. It is kind of unusual in this collection because, like I said, it basically features no magical element. And I quite like that. I mean, it's only the third story. I didn't really know. I didn't really knew what I was getting into when I read this story, but now after having read the whole collection, I noticed what's going on, basically. And what I kind of really liked about the story is how it explored fetishes. And I don't mean fetishes for hands are real and they're nothing bad. You don't have to be ashamed because of something like that. But it shows how fetishes can kind of become obsessions, and that they can become really, really hurtful when they are like the sole obsession you have. And with that, I want to tell you about the last story, which is Fabulous Beasts. It's the namesake of this anthology, and it's the last story of the book. Like I said, this is the story that won the British Fantasy Award all on its own. And I knew that beforehand, so I was really, really excited to read this story. And Priya Sharma did deliver. It was a really, really great story with all the themes I told you about before. There are family issues, there are personal issues, there is sex, mythical biology, and on top of that, it's a pretty horrific story. It's the longest story in this book. It's 30 pages long, but it doesn't quite feel like 30 pages. I really rushed the story because it was so interesting and exciting at the same time. We follow two different timelines, like in a lot of the other stories. One of them is set in the now, and the other is set in the past. Our main character is Eliza, who works with snakes at the School of Tropical Medicines, and she kind of recounts her path. That's in the beginning. That's you think that's the main part of the now part of the story, and in the part that plays in the past, she is not called Eliza, she's called Lola, and she lives with her mother and another girl who's not her sister, but kind of grows up as her sister. And from the beginning, it's told a bit uh, like a fairy tale. It starts with Eliza, tell me your secret. And she's saying, I'm a princess. And then the next paragraph starts with, we, Kenny's princesses, lived in a tower. We don't really know who Kenny is. We don't really know what's all this talk of princesses and towers is about. But we find out quite at the beginning that Lola or Eliza has a family secret, has a secret that was passed down to her, and her mother really doesn't like that. And the story really takes off when the brother of her mother, who is Kenny actually, gets out of prison and gets back home. And I don't want to tell you more about this because from that point on, it really, really gets exciting. So I guess that you notice how I'm talking about this collection. I really, really liked it. I think it was great. I liked the themes. I liked the execution, how Priya Sharma wrote the stories. They all felt weird. Some felt really, really, really weird. I mean, there's a story where a girl or a woman gets into a family of people who act like bees. I don't know if they actually are bees. It's never really clear from the story. I think they are humans who act like bees. I mean, that's crazy. But it takes a lot of imagination, I think, to come up with stuff like that. And I really, really appreciate it. The writing is beautiful. I didn't have the feeling that, okay, I'm reading the same story again, and this is the same story. And I mean, I kind of rushed through it. I think I read it in a few days, maybe. I mean, it is actually only 285 pages long. There's, of course, there's acknowledgements in here and about the author page. It also features a bit of artwork. I mean, it's always the same, but it looks like this, which I find kind of nice as well. I think I've rated it 4 or 5 stars, at least on Goodreads, and on Storygraph, I think I've rated it 4.5 out of 5 stars because it's a really, really good collection. I would really, really appreciate it if you read it too. Maybe you can post in the comments how you liked it, if you already read it, or if you're interested in more. As you may have noticed, I just updated my microphone, and I hope my voice sounds a bit better through that. And with that, I'm going to leave you. I hope you liked my video. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, you can let me know as well. Until next time for another book review. Goodbye.